What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets presented by So Rare, live here on FTN Network, also on Game Plus Network, listening on iTunes and Spotify. We always appreciate you. Smash the like button. Have any comments, any questions, leave them there. Get to them on the show. Always circling back on the YouTube videos in case there are any comments or any questions. At Chris Meaney on the Twitter machine. The threads season. I don't know if you're on Threads. I'm also on Threads, but still pumping tweets out, content, articles, pics. It's all there over at Chris Meaney on the Twitter machine. Meanswell11 on Threads. Also, always meaning well. Mean Streets, FTN at gmail.com. Had some people reach out to me lately about some things I'd like to see on this show. And by all means, this show is really about you guys here 5 days a week on Game Plus Network. A lot of content on our YouTube page, FTN Network, obviously all free. FTN Bets, FTN Daily, and FTNFantasy.com. We have a lot to get to here on this show. It's quote unquote a quiet week in Major League Baseball. Home Run Derby happening tonight. The MLB Draft last night. Want to go over round one. Todd Whitestone. Whitestone is dropping by a little bit. Telstar7 on the Twitter machine. We're going to talk about the fantasy baseball waiver wire. Of course, there are a few days off before the second half of the season gets underway on Friday, but we want to hit up on some of the waiver wire ads, players to pick up. And also just going to talk, it's the midway point here. I don't know if we'll do any season award, things like that, but we have some live updated World Series odds. I do want to talk about the Derby with Todd. We have the bracket laid out with some odds, so we'll pick some winners and see how that's going to go here. This evening should be a lot of fun. Right? It really should be. Vladimir Jr. is back in it. Oh, baby. Troy in the house. Home Run Derby. Let's go. Brazis 91 in the house as well. Good afternoon, sir. Derby time. It should be really fun. We got Luis Robert, who is a nice up-and-coming game, starting to scratch the surface of his prime, staying healthy this year, knock on wood. Really love what I've seen from him so far this season. And then we have some young, like Adley Rutschman. I'm rooting for him, right? A massive underdog. He's going up against Luis Robert to start, but also like Pete Alonso up against Julio Rodriguez, it being in Seattle. So it should be really entertaining Home Run Derby. I always love the Home Run Derby. So we'll talk the Derby with Todd and get into the last night MLB Draft too. I think one of the better drafts since like 2015. Actually, maybe even going way back to like 2005, like Tulo days. But it was the top 5 studs. I think all 5. I didn't know what order it would go, and I don't think really anybody knew what order it would go, but we'll talk about a few players there as well, and including the Blue Jays pick. We'll talk about that. Alex DeBrincat traded finally last night to the Detroit Red Wings. We'll get into that in a little bit, what it means for the Senators, what it means for the Red Wings. Still a couple free agents out there. Tarasenko looks like potentially joining the Ottawa Senators. I don't know if that is official or not, but we'll talk about that. And we will get into some fantasy football talk on this show as well. I want to take a look at round 6 of high stakes leagues, NFFC. High stakes leagues show you guys the players that are going on average in round 6, and also take a look at my overall rankings. That's something that, somebody had reached out to me. They wanted to dive into round 2 again. I've actually updated them a little bit. I got Nick Chubb here in round 2, but this is my 3rd overall running back. I've moved him up as my 3rd overall running back, and he's somebody that I've talked a lot about on this show over the past couple of weeks, and I think that he could be headed for a 2,000-yard campaign. Hang on. I'll tell you why I think that could happen for Nick Chubb, who's been the best running back in football over the last 2 years. He does lead the NFL in rushing yards since 2021, number 3 and number 2 in rushing yards over the last 2 seasons. And guess what? No Kareem Hunt. As of now, no Kareem Hunt on the squad. So we could see finally Nick Chubb have that full bell cow role here. Speaking of football, Aaron Schatz, want to give him a shout out as well. Founder of Football Outsiders. He has his game plan available over at ftnfantasy.com. You see it. It's the FTN Football Almanac 2023 version here from Mr. Schatz, who is an absolute baller. This guy is one of the GOATs in the industry. And you see, quote right there, a book that any self-respecting NFL fan needs to purchase. Just super thrilled for the opportunity to have his book on our website. He really is fantastic. I mean, he is one of the best guys in the industry. He's super intelligent, very smart. Of course, the founder of Football Outsiders. And you see here, including the Almanac, accuracy, the most accurate NFL team projections. But you're going to have all the projections from an NFL team standpoint, 500 plus fantasy football profile projections as well. DVOA metrics, of course, which is what we know about Football Outsiders. We're always referencing Football Outsiders on this show as well. The pre-order at $29.99, the final price at $34.99. This is a book that is for absolutely every football fan out there. Love seeing people like Meaney, who I think is fantastic in the industry. I love her work over at ESPN, quote retweeting that this is a must read. Just goes to show right there. I mean, goats in the industry are reading this and they go read it every single year. And you can see it over at ftnfantasy.com. Aaron Schatz, an absolute baller in the industry. And we're so pleased to have his almanac on our website. So check it out over at ftnfantasy.com. I want to also thank people that for the words of encouragement and watching the first show over at Sirius XM. Channel 87, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. The FTN Fantasy Show debuted on Saturday, July 8th. It's already done. Can't catch it. But you can catch us every single Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern. Again, that's Channel 87, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. I thought it was a pretty good first show, getting our feet wet in there. Myself, Jake Seeley, and Lauren Carpenter. We talked about some fantasy football strategies we like to employ in our drafts. We talked about a couple things that went wrong and a couple things that went right, and we'll really turn the page on 2022 and get into 2023. You can listen on demand. If you missed the show, you can check it out after, and we'll put a link inside the description as well. A Sirius XM offering 3 months for free with a link that we'll post inside the description of this video. So if you are listening on iTunes and Spotify, or you're watching on Game Plus Network, hop on over to our FTN Network YouTube page to check out the link. And again, any questions that you do have. Yes, 2,000 yards. Listen, this guy had a career high 1,500 rushing yards last year. He's been living in the 1,400 range. He's had 1,000 yards in 4 straight seasons. The one year he hasn't had 1,000 yards, his rookie campaign, I think he had like 996 rushing yards. And now the biggest thing is no Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is gone. You're taking away 120 plus carries, 50 some odd targets, 25, red zone opportunities that he had. This is going to be Nick Chubb's backfield. And if he's getting 1,400 rushing yards, I think he can flirt with 400 receiving yards this year. And that's right there around the number. I think he's the best pure running back in the game. Now you don't have to stick around to see why. I do have a couple other reasons why I do believe he can finish close to 2,000 total yards this season. Not rushing, total yards. He can catch. The dude can catch. He just hasn't had that role over the past couple of years. He's on pace for 50 grabs in his sophomore season before they brought in Kareem Hunt halfway through the season. We'll see if he is indeed going to get an uptick in targets and receiving yards, just like we told you on the show last year, Derrick Henry would get. And I think that's going to happen for Nick Chubb this season. We're going to take a quick break here on Mean Streets on Game Plus Network. We will get into some MLB stuff, the Derby, the MLB Draft, World Series odds, fantasy baseball waiver wire talk here with Mr. Todd Whitestone. He's in here next. Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues on Game Plus Network after the break.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against so rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
Back in. We'll check in with Todd here soon, and we'll just talk about the Alex DeBrincat trade. We're going to save that for a little bit later on. I still don't see anything on Vladimir Tarasenko as of yet, but we've been waiting for quite some time. Alex DeBrincat, an RFA, a restricted free agent, and just couldn't come to an agreement with the Ottawa Senators. I really don't know too much behind whether he wanted to be part of Ottawa's future, whether he wanted to go to Michigan and play some hockey there. I think that's probably both true. No shots at the Ottawa Senators, but I thought it was a risky get. It was a risky trade last year trying to get Alex DeBrincat, who had the 1 year left. And again, RFA, so they had his rights. As you see here, they just couldn't come to an agreement. So they flipped him last night to Detroit. As you see, in exchange for Dominic Kubalik, a conditional first-round pick and a fourth-round pick and a prospect there. Sabranjo Donovan headed to Ottawa as well. And then Alex DeBrincat later signed a 4-year extension with the Detroit Red Wings at $7.875 million. So for the next 4 years, he's only 25 years old. There's a nice little 1-2 punch there, I think, with DeBrincat and Dylan Larkin on that first line and first power play. And as Troy steps in, the Red Wings have $8 million in cap space left. Can you see them getting Tarasenko or Dumba? I could see them, adding Tarasenko for sure. I don't know about Matthew Dumba. They're kind of strapped a little bit on the blue line. I don't really love the Justin Hall deal, but they signed him $3.4 million for the next 3 years. They got Ben Sherratt at under $5 million for the next 4 years. They signed Shane Gostisbehere to a 1-year extension, or just a 1-year contract of $4.125. And they got Moritz Seider there, who's an absolute stud, and so is Jake Wallman. So I don't know if they're where would Dumba really fit into that decor? I think he's a really good, I think he's a good defenseman. He's had the past couple of seasons haven't been great for Matthew Dumba, but, maybe a change of scenery for him potentially. There were times I think he was a healthy scratch, I think 1 or 2 games last year for the Minnesota Wild. But I think Tarasenko is something that they could use, some offensive firepower. Lucas Raymond didn't have a great season last year, a bit of a compared to the year before, right? The rookie campaign was really good for him and not so much last year. So they do have a lot of holes, I think. David Perron, just 1 year left on the deal. Andrew Kopp, that deal's not looking great at all. 5.625 for the next 4 years. He did not have a good season in his first year in Detroit. They signed JT Compher there as well. But as for DeBrincat, when you look at some of his numbers and some of his statistics, a bit of a down year from him last year, only 27 goals. The shooting percentage was a little bit lower at 10%. He's had some campaigns with 18%, 20%, but I also want to keep in mind, I think he's more of a 30-goal scorer, whether it matters or not. I mean, he's a really good goal scorer. He's definitely a top 20 goal scorer, but 27 goals from him last year. He's had 2 campaigns with over 40, but he has played a majority of his hockey, with Patrick Kane, right? And say what you want about Kane's last couple seasons, but 3-4 years ago, Kane was still elite, absolutely. And Alex DeBrincat was benefiting from playing with a guy like that. And I thought last year, really, when Josh Norris went down, Shane Pinto was DeBrincat's center. There were a big chunk of the season where DeBrincat was on the second power play unit, not on that first power play unit, because for the most part, it was Tim Stützle with Brady Tkachuk, and they would mess around, have Giroux up there, Drake Batherson, but it was mostly Claude Giroux up on that top line. So, can he get in the 30, 35 goal range? I think so. I think if he can get in the 35 and 70 plus point, tier, I think that he's going to be a really good get for Detroit. Again, super young. They need some offensive firepower, the Red Wings. I still think that they got a lot of work to do. I don't view them as a playoff team. There is some bubble teams like Detroit and Ottawa, and I'm sure it was a really tough for Dorian to trade, DeBrincat inside the division to the Red Wings. This is a Sens team that I thought did a lot of good things last year in the offseason, and they still need to do a little bit more. They need to kind of shape up their blue line, and they may be okay with Korpisalo in goal. They may be all right there, but Detroit is probably past them with this move. And then Buffalo's that other team that, made some noise last year. I think they're a team that could maybe punch a ticket into the playoffs. We'll see. Teams like Boston and Tampa may take a step back, but those teams are probably playoff squads as well. It's really tough. You look around, like if Detroit is in, who's out? Because, Toronto's going to make it. You get Carolina, New York, the Rangers, the Devils, the Leafs. You figure the Bruins are still going to make it. The Lightning are going to make it. There's 6. Does Florida get in? That's 7. If the Islanders are not a team that gets in, then who gets in? Is Buffalo in? I probably not a lot of change, in the Eastern Conference. Teams are getting better, but still, I don't know if they're as good. I see Todd's in here now, so we'll take another break. We'll see what happens. The other dominoes that are going to fall here. The Tarasenko is rumored to go to Ottawa, and he's rumored to go to Carolina. So we'll see the teams that he ends up, where he does end up. I think the Hurricanes desperately need him. I think they need a little bit more firepower offensively up front for sure. And he would be a really good get for the Carolina Hurricanes inside the top 6. Power play, sniper on that power play as well. But certainly Ottawa could use him too. And I do want to say that Ottawa did, Chicago did okay here, because Chicago was the team that traded DeBrincat, and it was a 7th overall pick, a 39th overall pick, and a 3rd round pick. So Chicago did pretty good. It was a really risky trade. Ottawa giving up the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd as a 7th overall pick for DeBrincat. Just 1 year of DeBrincat, and then the return for them was just okay. It's a pick that could be Detroit's 1st round pick. It's a pick that could be Boston's 1st round pick. There's a lot of conditions, and we only have, an hour show here. Honestly, there's way too many conditions to kind of get into. But Todd is here next, so we'll turn the page from hockey to MLB. Hang by. We do have a lot of NFL stuff to get to towards the end of the show as well. Oh yeah, it is Scott Fish Day. I wanted to say that. Scott Fish Bowl. Scott Fish is fantastic. One of the GOATs as well in the industry. I mean, this is a guy that's been running the largest fantasy football draft among experts and just casual, fantasy football players. And he's been piling up money for charities and, bringing in money and buying toys for kids on Christmas. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Scott does a lot of great things in the industry. He is an absolute baller. Scott Fish Bowl got underway over the weekend, but most drafts here starting today. And I did want to say, for those that are taking part, we do have free rankings and strategy pieces over at ftnfantasy.com. We'll put a link inside the description of this video. Quan, if you can help me out, we'll do that as well. We'll get it here for the Scott Fish Bowl users, because the first 2 rounds are going to be heavy quarterbacks, a couple tight ends there with some of the statistics and rules. But it does get a little tough towards the middle part of your draft. So we'll have you covered over at ftnfantasy.com. Both articles are free to check out. We'll break and we'll bring in Todd in here a little bit. I would bet my life Columbus is better than the Islanders next season. Your life, dude. Your life. I don't know about that. I love you, Troy. I love you. I love how enthusiastic you are about your Blue Jackets. They're definitely on the rise, but who's the goalie in Columbus? I'll tell you what. The best goalie in the NHL is playing for the New York Islanders and Ilya Sorokin. We'll break. We'll dive into some MLB stuff here next with Todd. Keep her locked.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against SoRare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
Welcome back. And we got Todd Whitestone of FTN Fantasy joining us right now. Happy Monday to you, sir. Telstar7 on the Twitter machine. A little bit of a break in Major League Baseball. I know that there's a home run derby happening tonight in the All-Star game this week, but no MLB action around the diamond until Friday, but people are still hitting the waiver wire. I know High Stakes Leagues has the new week, right, with the 3 days, but I know ESPN and Yahoo and other sites like that, maybe a lengthy 2-week period here with just a couple days off. But you never sleep on the waiver wire, Todd. And if you sleep on the waiver wire, then you're snoozing in your league.
That's
and you're not going to win championship.
Exactly. Yeah, the two big pickups this week were Tariq Skubal of the Detroit Tigers, who has been back and been looking pretty good. So a lot of people need pitching, so that's who they went to. And also Colton Cowser, who was brought up last week. He's an outfielder for Baltimore, and he's got good potential. He has some speed, some power, and if they give him everyday playing time, he should be fine. So those are the two big pickups for the week. And as you mentioned, there's no game till Friday, but still people are working away at the waiver wire. So I assume people that listen to your show will be doing that as well.
Yeah, Cowser's a guy that I'm not going to lie. I spent a lot on him last night. A little bit more. I wanted him. I wanted a piece. I had some money. Unlike other, I guess what we've talked about a lot this year is that people in high stakes leagues they've spent their money early and often with all these pitching prospects that have been called up this season and a lot of other hitting prospects. I've kind of been patient. Good. One of my leagues, I was a little fortunate just to have some arms that haven't gone down. Now, I'll be honest, I had a lot of springs. I had a lot of guys that, unfortunately, they've suffered some injuries, like Nick Lodolo. I had so many shares of him and Hunter Green and these guys, but it hasn't worked out in some leagues. In some leagues, I just happen to have the cash. What do we expect? Is he going to? You said if he's an everyday guy, do you expect him to be close to that in the second half?
I think so, but Baltimore, they have a lot of guys there. I mean,
they do.
I feel like they're going to give him a shot, Chris, but I don't think that they're going to say if he has a slump for 2.5 weeks, we'll keep sticking him in there, because they've got these other vets floating around, Mountcastle, Ramon Urias, people like that. They've got other outfielders, Santander, and I just feel like he's got a window, but he doesn't have an unlimited time. They've got a very talented roster.
Yeah, they really do. What do you make of Tariq Skubal? As you mentioned too, as another guy, I feel like the strikeout stuff has kind of been there. Like, I know rookie season was double-digit K per nine, and then it came down a little bit as just like a strikeout per inning guy, and maybe some command issues. But I know it's a very small sample because they only have 8 innings, you have a 65% ground ball rate, but he's been a guy that's had a high fly ball rate, and he's given up some bombs over the course of his career.
Yeah. He's got a lot of pitches, but I feel like he's working his way back. So I wouldn't expect him to be just a straight arrow up and no problems at all. I feel like he's going to little bit of adjustment periods here and there, but he's got the talent. Even before his injury, people were always talking about him. And the Tigers, they look a little better. They're not going to give him great run support or defense for that matter. But I think he's a reasonable get. Certainly in the 15-team leagues that I play in, he's a must get. But I'm not sure that he's like a star pitcher or anything like that.
The Tigers are 39-50, but they're 5.5 games out of the division lead inside the AL Central. So it's okay. This team could actually.
They're not done by any means.
No,
I mean, you and I were talking up the Reds a couple of months back, and I certainly think that the Tigers, if you're really a gambling sort of guy, to win the division is not out of the realm of possibilities. But I think the odds are against you. But
Sure.
Look, I've seen crazier bets come through than that.
The Guardians are 45-45. The Twins are half a game back at 45-46.
Right.
And then the Tigers, as I mentioned, 5.5. And then the White Sox, probably one of the most disappointing squads so far this season.
Yeah.
I expect them to probably trade some dudes. Maybe they should trade Lance Lynn after that 11K performance, I think, against the Blue Jays that he had just the other day. But yeah, for Skubal, I mean, double-digit swinging strike percentage in all 4 years. And again, this is year 4. Is a very small sample. He's just getting ramped up, as you mentioned, but the 13.2% and then 12.9% as a rookie. He does have some swing and miss certainly in his game.
Yep.
That second year, I think he allowed like 30 some odd home runs. But is there anyone else there that you wrote about in the article? It's free, by the way, every single Monday to check out over at ftnfantasy.com. Is there anybody else? Always playing the closer game is always a tough one.
The closers, there weren't great closer candidates. The two that were picked up were Daniel Bard and Tanner Scott, who neither one is a sure thing, but people that don't have saves, certainly they're hoping that Daniel Bard, who was the closer before, might be time for him to come back because he did get a save last couple of days. And then Tanner Scott would be a play against AJ Puck because Puck did blow a couple saves over the past 5 days. So, but I don't think they're great candidates. Certainly if you have an open spot, it's a good speculation.
You said you've seen worse bets. Our Reds one, I don't think is that bad.
No, it's a good bet.
The 40-1 that we're riding here so far.
Yes.
The Cincinnati Reds lost yesterday. It was I think a 1-0 defeat, but this team has been absolutely amazing. Talk to me about Ellie, like Dela Cruz.
Oh
like,
my goodness.
This guy, every time he takes the bat or he's on the field, like he's doing something on the bases. If anybody didn't see over the weekend, he stole second, third, and home.
Yes.
With 2 pitches thrown and the same at bat. Unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I mean, the Brewers fell asleep for sure, but that was amazing. And, the thing, if you watch him run, Chris, his strides are so long that I don't know how many strides it takes to go base to base, but it's not that many. I mean, a guy like Trey Turner, who's very fast, he has to, really churn to go the distance. But Ellie takes like 6 strides and he's at third base. So the guy is just a freak. I mean, he's so powerful that he doesn't need to hit the ball square to hit it over the fence. He just needs to make reasonable contact. And so he's much better than I thought he ever was. And, if the key is here, are the Reds going to try to get like a decent pitcher at the deadline? Or are they just going to like say, hey, the attendance is up, we're doing great. We'll just sit on our gains. Because to compete, I think they need to go get like at least a league average pitcher.
For sure. Yeah. 50-41. They have a game lead on the Brew Crew there. It was a highly entertaining series. And that's where, you said the Brewers are definitely sleeping. After you stole a third, they just were like, whoa, what are we doing here?
Yeah, really.
And then he just immediately ran home. So if you're, go ahead.
I got a stat for you that I think you'll appreciate. I don't know if you saw it, but Luke Weaver, who's starting pitcher for the Reds, he's given up 34 earned runs in 35 innings, right? And over that stretch, he is 8-0.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that is pretty good. So Ellie, like again, if you've missed, he's played 30 games. He's 325, 363 with a 524 slug. He's got a 378 WOBA. He is striking out 29% of the time. The ISO is sub 200 now, but in those 30 games, he's scored 28 runs. He has 16 stolen bases, 16 ribbies, and 4 homers. Yeah, he's been absolutely electric to watch, and it's a really cool story for the Reds, and it's a really cool story for Major League Baseball. I love when these kids come up and they dominate and they have really good showings. And according to DraftKings, like Corbin Carroll is still he's still the favorite to win the NL Rookie of the Year at -300. DraftKings has Ellie at +250, and I think there's like a 4-1. There was a 4-1 over the weekend before he stole 3 bags in the space of like 15 seconds. That's probably gone, but I would say it's Carroll's lose because he's had such a really good season too, Todd.
Yeah, I think Carroll is going to win unless he really, I mean, he had an injury scare, but unless he really is injured and out for a while, I think he's got it for this year. But Ellie is, he's almost another category, Chris. They should make up a new category for him, like new arrival of the year or something.
And I feel like they should. This is the first time I can remember in a long time. We're here at the All-Star break, July 10th, and are both MVP awards wrapped up? I mean, Ohtani is minus 800. DraftKings has Ohtani versus any other player in the field at plus 500. The next closest after Ohtani is Corey Seager at 16-1. And then in the National League, Ronald Acuna Jr. is lighting the world on fire. These Braves are winning almost every single game. They're the first 60 wins. They did lose yesterday, but they've been rolling through every team. Acuna Jr. is minus 330. Mookie Betts is next at plus 650. It's the same. DraftKings is offering Ronald Acuna Jr. to win NL MVP or the field at plus 230. I mean, an injury would have to happen for either of these guys not to take home the award, right? I know Ohtani should probably just have his own award at this point.
I think you're right on both counts. Yeah, I mean, there's no way that those guys lose it without being injured. I mean, it's piled up too many stats for anyone to catch them, I think. And they're just that good on top of it, and I've had some success, Chris. I know you like to look at these things. If you just have bet the team total for Atlanta, blindly, and they're almost better when they play a good pitcher because they can pile up runs against a good pitcher. And also after that pitcher leaves, they're also excellent against the bullpen. So that's a bet that you can look at sort of almost daily.
So I know our subs have been just cashing, like you said, blindly. They're taking over 1.5, 2.5 runs in the first 5 innings.
Right.
Like there was 1.5 in the first 5 innings for a long time. And then yesterday up against a good pitcher in Tampa Bay, their team implied total was 3.5 at minus 120, 3.5. Right. And I just think that they're matchup proof. I don't care who they're going up against. This team has got so much firepower. And as we transition into the World Series odds here, they are the favorite to win the World Series, and they're going to be extremely tough. I mean, Strider is just every time this guy takes the mound, I'm always in awe. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is phenomenal. And then up and down, their lineup is fantastic. As you see, plus 330 to win the World Series. The Dodgers are next at plus 550. The Rays at 6-1. The Astros at 8-1. Then we get into some longer shots, and the Rangers at 13-1. The Bluebirds at 17-1. Your Pinstripes. Yankees at 18-1. The Phillies at 20. The Orioles at 22. On the right side, maybe one of the better value plays may be the Diamondbacks at 28-1. I don't know if you're buying the start that they've had here, but they've been great. The Brew Crew at 35-1. We don't think the Brewers or the Reds are going to win the World Series, but one of those two teams are going to get into the playoffs, and to get a team at 50-1, at 35-1 to win the World Series is not awful here. But teams that you don't like, no Mets on here. They got to be one of those surprise teams. Mets. Sure. The Padres are starting to play better ball at 45-1. What do you make of this list, Todd?
I mean, look, if you get a team that's in the quote tournament, you always have a chance because, any team can get injured or something. But I mean, I'm just so high on the Braves. I almost think the 330 is still a good number.
Yeah.
It's crazy to say that about the favorite, but I just feel like they're so strong, and you've got the injury risk, but the other teams, I mean, the Dodgers and the Rays have big problems in their pitching staff, both of them. So, I mean, they could trade for players. That's usually not what the Rays do, but I just feel like it would take a big thing for one of these teams to come out of the woodwork and beat them. But, I've seen it happen many times. The favorite doesn't win, but everything in my bones says the Braves, this is their year.
I don't even want to pat myself on the back because I'm a sucker for the Braves. When they won the World Series, we had it on the show at 10-1, having them as a future to start the season, and Ronald Acuna Jr. Both of them, we had Acuna Jr. at 10-1 to win the MVP. I think that there's just a little bit of a clearer path in the National League. As much as I respect the Dodgers, who now are tied with the Diamondbacks atop the NL West. We're talking about the Central and the Brewers and the Cubs, and not so much the Cubs, but the Brewers and the Reds. And then, Miami's playing really good ball as well. But I think the path is a little bit clearer in the NL. So I agree. I think there is still a little bit of value on that number. Here's a question for you.
Yep.
If Ohtani gets traded to the National League in the next 2 weeks, is he still going to win the AL MVP?
Oh, that's a good question. I think he's got so much of a lead. I would still say yes. Because, the pitching and the hitting just sets him so far apart that I don't know what he does in the other league won't count. But yeah, I would have to say yes. I mean, I don't know, Corey Seager.
I don't think we've ever seen this, Todd. I went back and I did a bunch of research. We've never seen an MVP. We've seen MVPs get traded. MVPs that have won the award before get traded multiple times. But we haven't seen a player get traded in the season when they're minus 800 favorites to win the MVP. And I started again doing more research. Like, could he win both awards? It's like, nah, he's not going to win both awards.
No.
But the minimum is 58 games played to be, among the qualified leaders.
Right.
It's never happened. I did, again, doing some research. I did see this in 1984. Rick Sutcliffe was traded from Cleveland to Chicago and won the NL Cy Young because most of his work came in the NL that year.
Yeah,
but Todd, he was traded early on in the season.
Yeah.
It was early on. It wasn't like
this would be unprecedented. This would definitely be unprecedented. No doubt about it. But this is slightly off the topic, but I did message you that I really think the Angels are trying to figure out a way to hold on to Ohtani, even though they might lose him for basically nothing, because I just feel like they're hoping against hope that he stays and that, that they think of something, and that they just don't want to deal with it. I think everybody's assuming he's going to be traded by the deadline, but I'm just not unconvinced.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're free falling. They spent 2 or 3 days inside a wild card spot, and ever since they've lost Trout and Drury and Rendon and Gio, and even Joe Adele left over the weekend. I think they've lost 13 of their last 17 games, so they're really sliding. Yes. And it's gonna be very interesting to see what does happen with him, because it's if they really want to think about their future and be competitive, they probably have to trade him for some prospects. But we'll stop with the Ohtani talk. Go ahead.
It's the right baseball move to trade him, but I'm just, they keep him as long as they can. They have the attendance while he's there, and maybe they're just going to say that's enough. I don't know. I feel like they're very reluctant to do it, and they really should reset. But when have the Angels ever really reset their whole team?
Never.
So I mean, I just. Feel like they're avoiding reality.
They're the laughing stock of Major League Baseball. I'll tell you that. We got a break. I want to get into some home run derby stuff with you, and then we'll quickly maybe get a thought or two on the MLB draft on the way out. So keep her locked, Todd. We'll be back here in a couple. Hang tight. Mean Streets here live on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Todd Whitestone here. Let's bring up the MLB Home Run Derby bracket. We do have some odds here, courtesy of DraftKings as well. And Luis Robert, the number 1 seed here up against Adley Rutschman. Rutschman is the heavy underdog. These are odds to win it all. The matchup from DraftKings is -220 for Robert and +180 for Adley Rutschman. We have Adolis Garcia here up against Randy Arozarena. We have Mookie Betts up against Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And Guerrero Jr. is one of the favorites here at +360 to take home the Derby. And of course, I don't know. I'm sure Blue Jays remember 2019. He had a whopping 91 home runs, a total of 91 bombs, and he does hold the record for 40. The most in a single round. Of course, Pete Alonso has won this 2 of the last 3 years. Soto did win it last year. There was no home run derby in 2020 due to COVID, but Pete Alonso up there as well, 35. Julio Rodriguez had a great show last year, 32 in one round as well, and 81 is the second most behind Vlad. He did that last season. Pete Alonso had 74 in 2021. How about that first matchup? Pete Alonso versus Julio Rodriguez, Todd.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like Julio and Adley Rutschman, they're excellent hitters, but they're not guys that can just stand there and just hit homer after homer after homer. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like that's not their game, really. They're sort of all over the park hitters. They make good contact. I don't know if they'll be in a groove. And certainly for Rutschman, it's his first time doing this. And that usually is difficult to adjust to because, if you have not been through it, it's a little bit tough. So I would say I would lean against those two guys, even in the matchups that they have initially.
Yeah, I mean, back to Ohtani for a second. You remember how gassed he was last time we saw him in the home run? He was just completely, oh my goodness, this is taking a toll on my body. I can't do this
I know.
over and over. But I feel like there's something to be said about Luis Robert on that left side, because if he gets by Adley Rutschman, then his next matchup is going to be either Garcia or Rosarino. He kind of avoids what would be a tougher part of the bracket. Like a lot of people are talking about Mookie Betts. I see Mookie Betts on FanDuel at 15-1, but Mookie's got to go through Vlad, then he's got to go through Pete Alonso and Julio, and then he's got to get to the finals and beat whoever does get to the finals. Let's rapid fire through this.
Okay.
Rosarena or Garcia?
Rosarena or Garcia. I'll take Garcia.
Betts or Vlad?
Betts or Vlad. I think Vlad will take care of it. He's got the experience in this contest.
Alonso or Julio?
Alonso pretty easily.
Okay, so then Vlad and Alonso.
Vlad and Alonso, that's a tough one. I could see Vlad pulling it out, but I think Alonso is sort of made for this type of event. So I think he would even beat Vlad, even though it would be a very difficult test.
And then who does Vlad play in the finals? Either
So
Robert or
the other would be Robert against Garcia for me. So I would say they're both excellent specimens. Would take a flyer on Garcia to beat Robert, but I could see it easily being the other way around.
And the winner then? You got Pete?
Yeah, I think Alonso he's just sort of figured this thing out, Chris. I just feel like that's the key to it. It's not like a regular hitting, against a pitcher. It's something you have to know how to do, and he's just unlocked the secret. So I would go with him for sure to win the whole thing.
It's really tough not to go with Pete. I'm going to go with Vlad. Just to be a little bit different. But yeah, I thought Vlad really impressed me when I saw him. I didn't know, like, as a guy, I knew he had power, kind of a ground ball guy, struggling to hit home runs this season, especially at Rogers Center. But man, he was able to kind of stay in there too, as a bigger boy, to stay in and take the pitches. And he went on a heck of a run too. So it should be fantastic tonight. To be a lot of fun for sure. We'll get you out of here on this. Thoughts on the MLB draft last night? I know I don't know a lot of these players for sure, but definitely the top 5. There was a bit of a drop off, I think, after 5. Right. And the first 5 here, all of them, I think, depending on what scouts you were looking at or rankings, there's different orders for all of these guys. I think maybe the bigger surprise was Langford falling to 4 to Texas, but Paul Skeens here. Maybe the most touted pitching prospect of all time, or since Steven Strasburg. Could see him as early as maybe next season. And I really like the Dylan Cruz pick. I mean, both guys from LSU, the first time that's ever happened. LSU 1, LSU 2. I mean, Cruz is a guy that, man, he's electrifying. I think the Nats really got themselves a good player there after losing Harper and losing Soto over the past couple of years. I think Cruz he's one of those guys that, walks more than he strikes out, sneaky power, some speed there as well. What'd you make of last night?
So yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. The three guys that are really good near-term fantasy impact players are Skeens, Cruz, and Langford. Clark and Jenkins are fine prospects, but they're high schoolers. They'll be quite a few more years away. Skeens could help the Pirates right now. He'd probably be their number one pitcher right now.
100%.
He's that good. He just, he's just dominant. And I think they might even bring him up for a cup of coffee this year, but definitely next year you'd see him in the rotation. Cruz and Langford are both excellent hitters. Cruz is more of a bat to ball guy, more of a good contact average hitter. He does have power, but not as much as Langford. Langford, I think, should hit more homers, but maybe not quite as high of an average. They're both good defenders. They both could be sort of building blocks for those teams. So I think those are the three guys to keep an eye on. Certainly if you're playing in dynasty formats and you want a guy for the future, any of those three guys is excellent pickup.
Absolutely. And I did want to give a little bit of love here to pick number 20 from the Toronto Blue Jays, Arjun Nimala, and out of high school is Indian descent. And he grew up like playing cricket. And the translation here, I just think it's a fun pick for the Blue Jays. I think it's a great thing for Major League Baseball from a global standpoint, to grow the game. And this is, I think, really cool. And watching the broadcast last night, a lot of the people on the desk were talking about how he has an upside. The ceiling is extremely high. A little bit of a pick. Maybe the floor isn't as high as some would like, but the ceiling they have being a top 5 prospect from this draft. I mean, pretty cool.
Oh yeah. It's really hard to tell. Even you listen to the real good prospect guys, and I've talked to a couple, when there's a high schooler, they can show signs, but you really don't know how they're going to pan out. Some will not make it. Some will be great. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that kid is talented. I was laughing at when the Yankees picked a high schooler who I don't really know, except he's the son of a major leaguer, George Lombard. And they were saying, oh, he's very much like Marcus Semien. And I was like, Marcus Semien is like a veteran player who made himself good over 15 years of hard work. I mean, how could you even tell that about a kid in high school? So I think a lot of it's a little strained, the comps. But look, these kids are all talented, and I think they're more advanced than ever before in general. But that still doesn't mean they're all going to make it.
No, not at all. There's still like a lot of work to be done. And with the Blue Jays pick, they're so young around the inside of their diamond that they don't have to rush to get him up. But I'm rooting for Arjun Nimala, and I think it's a pretty cool story for Major League Baseball from a global standpoint as well. Todd, always appreciate your time. We're going to say goodbye to you for now. Enjoy the Derby, and we'll chop it up again soon. We'll catch you next week on Monday. We're going to turn our attention to a little bit of fantasy football talk. We'll take a look at high stakes leagues, round 6. We'll take a look at the players that are going inside round 6 on average. That next on Mean Streets.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
And let's take a look at round 6 of high stakes leagues on average here over the past 2 weeks. You'll see Deontay Johnson up at the top. You know, Deontay Johnson's he's a good wide receiver, a lot of volume. He runs good routes. I think he's cleaned up some of the drops that he's had, over the early part of his career, but 0 touchdowns last year. I'm sure he's going to, Miles Sanders is a guy that had 0 touchdowns 2 years ago, and he got double-digit touchdowns. He's going to score some touchdowns. I kind of view him as a little bit of a value, but I'm not really interested. I like the Pickens to Pickett. It's the Pickens-Pickett connection that I really dig. Tyler Lockett, I think, is a really good value here at 63. I do like Miles Sanders, too. I think that they're going to lean on the ground game there. And yeah, he's not going to have as good of a season in Carolina like he did in Philadelphia. Of course, the offense is not going to be as good. The offensive line is not as strong, but he could fall into like a bell cow role. I mean, his rookie season, he caught 50 passes. Let's not forget that when he entered the league, he was in elite company. Actually, he was one of 4 backs to have 4.6 yards per carry, 500 receiving yards, 50 grabs, and 800 rushing yards. CMC, Alvin Kamara, and Dalvin Cook. And even the years after that, he was with Chubb and Henry is like the most 50-yard touchdowns, and last year had a nice bounce back campaign. I believe in the talent. I believe in the skill set. I think he's a pretty good target there, especially for people that don't like to target running backs early. Lockett is a really good value. I love JSN. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I like the addition, but Lockett has actually finished ahead of DK Metcalf in fantasy points per game in each of the last 2 seasons. DK Metcalf goes as like wide receiver 15. Lockett goes as wide receiver 30-35. So he's a pretty good value there. Brendan Ayuk, Alexander Mattison, DeAndre Swift. I like Madison. He should get a lot of volume, a lot of targets. I don't know how efficient he's going to be, but he's going to get a lot of the work that Dalvin Cook has gotten in Minnesota over the last 2 years. DeAndre Swift just never showed us that he's had a full season in the NFL. He's a good offensive line. Philly boy, I'm excited for him to rock the green, but he's not going to be the goal line back, and I just imagine he's going to be like a 8 to 12 touch guy in Philly. Cam Akers, I'd much rather have than DeAndre Swift. Finished off with 3 straight 100-yard games last season to wrap up what was a rocky year for him in the doghouse, away from the team. But the Rams didn't do anything to bring in any competition. I do believe the backfield is his, and they bolstered the offensive line through the draft. Dameon Pierce, I like. He may not catch as many passes. We probably won't get involved with his catch prop like we did last season with the addition of Devin Singletary, but I do like Dameon Pierce as the lead there. Kyle Pitts, I'm just out. I just don't like the targets tight ends in this range, and I just don't believe really in this offense. I think they're going to run the ball a lot, and Drake London's the one there, and I'm just not even Goddard. I like Philly. I'm not going to get involved with Dallas Goedert here in the 6th round. I love Rachaad White, 50 catches last year as a rookie. They didn't do anything to bring in any competition. They lost Leonard Fournette, and it's a bad team, but he's going to get a ton of work. And then Mike Evans as well. I'm just out. It's really risky. Mike Evans had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games where he had 10 or fewer fantasy points. That's a lot. He had 43 fantasy points in week 17, the final game of the season. He was very boomer bust last year with Tom Brady. Think about how boomer bust he's going to be this season without Tom Brady. Pass. I'm in on Godwin. I like White, but I'm out on Mike Evans. We got one more segment here on Mean Streets. We'll be back in a couple.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level.
Welcome back in. As you know, a couple weeks ago, we talked round one of how I thought round one of fantasy football draft should go. And everybody knows I'm alpha wide receiver. A lot of complaints on TikTok. This is not how it's going to go. More running backs will go in the first round, and that's fine. This is how I feel like round two should go. And because I had a lot of wide receivers in the first round, you see a little bit of a running back run here. And I've recently moved Nick Chubb up to RB3 for me. He's not going to go in the first round. I think he's a great pick at the end of the first round. Second and third in rushing yards in the last 2 years. The most rushing yards since 2021. 1,000 yards in 4 of his 5 seasons. Never under 5 yards per carry. I think he's the best pure runner in football, behind arguably one of the better offensive lines in football. He touched career highs last year in rushing yards, 1,500, attempts, 302, and total touchdowns at 13. Now Kareem Hunt is gone. That's 120 plus carries gone, including 25 inside the red zone, 45 targets-ish, and 30 grabs. Jerome Ford is the only backup in Cleveland. He has 8 attempts for his career and 0 catches. I think Nick Chubb could get 2,000 total yards this year. If he's flirting with 1,500 rushing yards, I think he can get 400 to 500 receiving yards. He was on pace for 50 catches in his sophomore year before they brought in Kareem Hunt halfway through the season. And with just 6 games with Deshaun Watson, he had 10 catches. And how about their final game of last season together? 6 targets, 5 grabs, 45 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. I think that's a sign of things to come. I really do believe that Nick Chubb is going to get more work through the air this season. I'm a big fan, and I want him in almost every single draft. Jonathan Taylor's in there next. Anthony Richardson under center. I think this could help him. Offensive line is much better than they showed last year. Matt Ryan was a statue last year. Anthony Richardson and what he can do on the ground will open up some lanes for Jonathan Taylor, plus the lean on Jonathan Taylor, what I do believe is kind of like a veteran back, even though he's only been in the league for a couple years. Bijan Robinson, his ADP is 7. I'm not in on it. The fantasy community is telling me that he is going to be the best running back in fantasy football this year by drafting him at his absolute ceiling. It's a great O-line, run first offense. I just can't take him over some of these veteran backs. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 146 targets last year, 1,100 yards. I don't know if there was a guy that was stopped inside the 5 more than him, but keep in mind knowing Jameson Williams for the first 6 weeks of the season. Garrett Wilson's ADP is like 10. He is getting drafted in the first round almost in every single draft pretty much now, and I just can't get there either. 147 targets, 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. A definite upgrade at the quarterback position with Aaron Rodgers, but don't be shocked if Alan Lazard is going to eat inside the red zone as well. I like Garrett Wilson. I have him a tier ahead of some of these other wide receivers, but it's a little bit too early for me in the first round. Josh Jacobs next, the rushing champ, franchise tag. I think that the Raiders will continue to run him into the ground. Derrick Henry, career high in terms of targets and receiving yards last year. Quarterback play in the offense, I'm a little bit worried about. A lot of tread on the tires, but he did lead the NFL in attempts last season. And as I mentioned, he did have a really good campaign through the air. 41 targets, 33 grabs, and 398 receiving yards. I got Jalen Waddle next, 7th in receiving yards, explosive offense. Even when Tua was down, he was still a big part of the offense. I got Tony Pollard there at 21. No Zeke, Deuce Vaughn. Not really going to cut into his workload. I don't know if he can hold up over a full season. He was one of the worst goal line backs in the NFL. I still have a feeling that Dallas is going to bring back Zeke. Ramondre Stevenson, 69 grabs last season, 4th among running backs. They didn't do anything to bring in competition. James Robinson's not on the squad. Devontae Smith at 23, 8th in receiving yards, 95 grabs. On 136 targets, over 2,100 receiving yards in 2 years. A lot of one-on-one coverage with A.J. Brown getting a lot of attention in Philly, and an explosive offense. Then Chris Olave, the only wide receiver inside the top 10 in air yards and ADOT last season as a rookie. Michael Thomas has played 10 of the Saints' last 50 games over the past 3 years, so this is a guy that I think you want in drafts. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.